When The Division 2 launched, I basically naively thought that maybe through my content, maybe through, offering suggestions, explaining how things worked, explaining how things maybe should work, that I could help the game, that I could give the developers some suggestions that might improve the player experience or just make the game, better overall. Obviously, as we all know, The Division just isn't in a state that we would probably want it to be, right? I mean, Division 1, it was in an okay state at the end, but even then, it still wasn't in a state that I would consider great. And I guess that can kind of be blamed on a lot of the player base. We all have these different demands and different expectations, and this is kind of why I guess I can get defensive or hostile towards certain viewpoints in the game. Now look, I'm not a fan of every YouTuber, I'm not a fan of every, Twitch streamer, I'm not a fan of everyone who posts anything about the game on the internet. And there's a very simple reason for this. A lot of the people that think they know the game, that try to offer suggestions and basically say how the game should be, don't really understand the game themselves. And look, there's plenty of different people that play the game, right? You've got PvE only people, you've got PvP only people, you've got people that only play solo, you've got people that only play in group, you've got people that only play DPS builds or only play skill build or only play healers. There's plenty of different aspects of people for this game, right? So, I mean, you can focus on whatever you want, and if that's what you want to play, that's fine. My issue here is if you are, let's say, only PvE and you demand that, the PvP be removed from the game. I mean, that's stupid, right? And the same thing with PvPers. If you are this PvP type, and especially like this, this game is a shooter only PvP kind of player, and you think that skills are cheese and they should just be removed from the game, look, I fundamentally disagree with you, and I will, say this. I will say that your opinion is kind of stupid. And the reason I say this is because we all know what game this is. This is The Division. This isn't Call of Duty. This game has stats, it has skills, it has weapons, it has a whole assortment of different things to enhance your playstyle. And just because a PvPer doesn't like a specific aspect of the game doesn't mean that it should be removed to cater to that small percentage of the player base. And yes, I may have my own biases in the game. I mean, I do love skill builds, but I also enjoy playing DPS. I enjoy being the healer. I enjoy being the support build. I can play it all. I mean, it's not really a big deal to me. I like playing the game as long as the game is fun and interesting. Where my bias comes in is I heavily remember what we were, shown during the E3 2013 trailer. The original vision of the game, or at least the original vision that we were presented with of the game. That is basically the image that I try to develop my own opinions about the game around. Because that's what players bought into. That's what players saw that interested them. That's what players saw that made this game look like it was going to be the next, coming of Jesus, for the video game world. I mean, the 2013 trailer, I mean, if you haven't seen it, I mean, you should really look it up. Because, I mean, I watch it all the time. Because, it's just kind of like when you get depressed with The Division, you look at this trailer and you kind of just think back of happy times, like when this game, before this game was released, and you're just like, this game is going to be amazing. This game is going to be awesome. And of course, we all know, the bait and switch in the video game industry is real. But if anything, I want The Division to be that game. So when I critique something, when I say, this isn't how it should be, I'm speaking from a point of view that that trailer, what was presented then, the kind of game that we were more or less shown, more or less promised, that's what I want. That's what I expect the game to be. And there was nothing about PvP only, PvE only. There was nothing about being just a shooter. It was presented with this all-encompassing attitude. And look, I know many people want to say that The Division is a shooter. And look, I'm not going to argue that there aren't shooter aspects in The Division. The surface visuals of the game are a third-person shooter, right? You've got the HUD, you've got the third-person view, you've got a weapon, and you've got crosshairs. Of course, there are shooter aspects to the game. But if you were to back up that camera to an overhead perspective, I mean, the game would feel a lot like Diablo. The game would look a lot like The Ascent. I mean, that was the game that launched, I think, last month. It saw some popularity on YouTube. I played it briefly. I didn't really like it. But visually, that's the kind of game that it would be if it was an overhead perspective. But if you look at the design of the game, it's really heavily influenced by, something like an MMO, like World of Warcraft. As much as people want to like shun that name and act like World of Warcraft is terrible, well, if you think that opinion, odds are you're probably just a shooter Call of Duty only type. But the game itself wasn't terrible. It was good. I enjoyed World of Warcraft. Now, I didn't exactly enjoy the combat aspect of it. And the funny thing is, the thing about World of Warcraft that I didn't like was the tab targeting. I didn't like the, you lock onto a target, you just hit some buttons, and then you do damage, and that's it. The combat was meh. I mean, the world, the missions, just the exploration, the building, it was very well done. I loved that aspect of the game. Just the sense of adventure and awe that was in World of Warcraft. And this was the original vision for The Division. The Division was supposed to be a tab-targeted multiplayer online game. Now, how MMO was it going to be, or were you always going to be able to see players in the world and be able to like do missions with them, or run all sorts of stuff just by meeting random groups or whatever? Like were there instances and dungeons and stuff like that? I don't know. It would have been probably cool if there was, but either way, it wasn't supposed to be a shooter necessarily. They gradually morphed their view of the game into that. So they kind of added the shooter aspects, which is great because, if World of Warcraft would have been more, combat oriented into actual like, real-time combat, I probably would have still been playing the game because, that's just awesome. The tab targeting, it's good for some, very basic, very simple, MMO style games, but for a daily grind, it's not exactly the most fun aspect for most people. Having The Division, where it actually incorporates shooter personality into this MMORPG type world, is fantastic. But just because it incorporates the shooter mentality does not make it a shooter only. And that's where a lot of the people who have issues with skills and all this stuff kind of get this wrong, because they see it as, well, it's supposed to be a shooter. It's not supposed to be a shooter. They added these shooter elements to kind of get some of you people into the game, but it was always this MMORPG at the heart. And that's why you have these skills, that's why you have these talents, that's why you have this build customization. All right, all these aspects that everyone plays The Division for are because of the MMORPG influence. It's pure and simple, right? Looter shooters exist because of the MMORPG experience. And you can hate that, and you can try to disagree with that all you want, but the fact is, that's the truth. This game would not be where it is because of shooters. This game is where it is because of the MMORPG world. Now, look, like I said, I am beyond happy that there is a game that puts the shooter elements into this world. And I love the fact that I can be DPS only. I love the fact that I can be a skill build. I love the fact that I can be a healer or a tank or a support build. And yes, of course, there are people that hate the idea of having the Trinity, which is, DPS, tank, and healer. Granted, yeah, I don't want it to be that simple and clear cut. But of course, those are aspects that make the game fun. Now, my problem with people who constantly demand that skills be removed, or that skills should be nerfed, and that skills shouldn't be able to, kill players, and that even if you are a skill build, your primary damage should be from DPS, from your actual weapon. The problem with this is they are completely ignoring all of the design of the game. And if you actually consider what this game was designed to be, which was this PvEVP, cohesive experience, that means that you could go from PvE into PvP with your build, expecting a similar experience, expecting a similar play style, right? That is something that I think is inherent with the game that is enjoyable. Being able to enter the Dark Zone with my build and have fun. Now when you get into these aspects of nerfing things for PvP only, and nerfing things for PvE only, and just kind of changing things based on what a person plays, you're getting rid of this coherence, right? It's no longer a unified experience, and more is just like a bunch of different little pieces that you can jump into. And that may be fine for some people. But if you're a Division purist, this idea of this all-inclusive world where, you could be farming a checkpoint, or you could be, killing some bosses or doing this activity, and then all of a sudden go into a PvP zone. I mean, that's like an experience that you don't really see in any game, especially now. They're all trying to either make it just a PvP only experience or just make it a PvE only experience. I mean, look, we see where it goes. Something like Anthem, it bombed, in large part just because of the developers. But also, there was nothing to do. I mean, yeah, you could farm PvE, but what was the point? There was this amount of content, and then after that content was over, why keep farming for better gear? Because it doesn't matter. Same thing with Outriders. Outriders has an end game, and many people at launch praised how good the end game was compared to a lot of the other ones. But again, there's nothing to build towards, right? You're trying to race against the clock to get all this gear, and complete the challenge tiers, right? So you race against the clock to get the better gear. But the thing is, if you were already getting the top tier rewards from beating this time at the end game, what was the point of getting better gear to beat these times that you were already beating? I mean, okay, yeah, well, it's to try out new things. Come on, guys. We all know that trying out new things in the same exact stuff isn't as fun as you want to make it sound. Not many players are going to stick around for that. That's the reason I left. I mean, it's just, okay, I got a new piece of gear to do this activity again with. Like, nah, it's not happening. That's kind of why we like the Division, because, even if you aren't necessarily 100% into PvP, there's always a little inkling of, going into the DZ and other players being there, and you're going to defend yourself. Not many people in the Division are just going to completely ignore the Dark Zone. And that's what makes the Division fun to me. A lot of this, PvE stuff gets boring if they don't constantly update it, right? I mean, if content only lasts for a month or two, and then there is a, 10-month period of no new content, I just can't do it. I can't keep farming the same mission over and over and over and over again, hoping for like a 0.1% increase in my crit chance. I'm good. Like, okay, I've only got 57% crit chance. I don't care. If I lose a fight because of 3% crit chance, whatever. But the PvP builds into why you want to keep farming stuff. You want to get better at fighting other players. You want to kind of min-max your stuff for fighting other players. And this kind of builds into the cohesiveness of the game. You farm PvE, you build up your kit, and then you explore into, the Dark Zone. Try to farm a little bit, realize that you have to fight other players, try to make the best of it. Build up your kit outside of the Dark Zone, going back to PvE, trying to min-max some stuff before you can actually go in and really farm a lot of those PvP, Dark Zone specific items. And that's enjoyable. But to then say, well, your build should be irrelevant because I only want to play it this way, it's dumb. It's childish, I mean, oh, well, your build doesn't take skill, it shouldn't be able to do anything. Like, look, the one thing that players, just at least the players that kind of bash skills that they never take into account, they never like comment on, is the fact that a sticky bomb build, or a sticky seeker build, or any of these explosive builds, or any of these status effect builds, how often do you think they talk about how often these skills miss? Just from using skills, they miss a good amount of the time. I mean, at least when you combine the amount of misses that I have with the skills and the amount of glitches that happen with the skills, and not only that, but the skills themselves have this incredibly long cooldown. I mean, if you compare it to other MMORPGs, like if you compare it to World of Warcraft, there are mages and priests and death knights and all that stuff. They've got their own abilities. But the cooldowns on most of these abilities are conducive to that playstyle. So you can cast a fireball, and then cast another fireball, and then cast another fireball. You can cast, these magical abilities, these AoE abilities, within a timely manner, and they are scaled for that. The problem with the Division is that their cooldowns are insane, at least by comparison, and you've only got 2 of them, so you can't really, have a rotation like you would in something like World of Warcraft. So this does limit the potential that you can actually, try to balance it with, because otherwise, if you just completely neutered the skills and make it so that they can't kill, well, then you just completely reduce the ability for a player to use skills in the Dark Zone. They can't defend themselves. They can't, fight other players on a fair manner. I mean, it's just the truth. If you invest everything into skills, but then the game is telling you, well, in the Dark Zone, because players complained, we're going to make sure that, you can't actually function properly. And that's bullshit. Right? It would be the same thing as me saying, well, you know what? I want skills to be the only thing that are playable, so we should nerf all weapons so that they can't kill anyone. Or we should introduce a new stat that players can max out to 100% that just, completely removes bullet damage. That way all the skill builds can just roll around with 100% bullet resistance and just kill people with skills. It's insane. All right? I don't advocate for that. I would say that, tit for tat should be somewhat fair. I mean, if you can completely mitigate status effects and completely mitigate explosive damage, I mean, yeah, it's a little bit iffy at this point. But there's nothing really that mitigates bullet damage specifically. And there was the one crit resistance stat that they, of course, removed from the game and replaced with pulse resistance. Like, that means a damn thing. When there's something that affects bullets, people get very upset and touchy. But then those same people don't realize how hypocritical they are when it's like, well, we should have more resistance to skills. We should be able to completely ignore skills because we just want to dance around in circles and there shouldn't be anything that can kill us while we're dancing around in a circle. Like, get your Division 1 circle jerk bullshit out of here. Like, that shit is cancer. It's stupid. All right? This game should not be played by strafing back and forth, running around a target, rolling on the ground within like 4 feet of another player, unable to be killed because of, the targeting system, the aiming system, the lag, all this stuff just prevents you from being hit. Like, that's not fun. And the fact that people think that skill is, embarrassing. I mean, the fact that people think that skill is disappointing. Like, it doesn't take skill to flop on the ground like a Magikarp. It doesn't. Now, there is some skill involved with the actual mechanics of shooting. I'm not going to deny that. But people who are in this like shooter-only category think that players have just started playing shooters. Most players in the Division are not new to shooters. Shooting games are not some sort of newfangled, invention that just came out like 4 years ago. The mechanics have been there and been relatively the same for many years. I mean, at least, what, like 30, 40 years? So to say that this is a skill that, only the elite in PvP have, and that's why we need to get rid of, skill builds, look, it's bullshit. In Division 1, I was mainly a skill build because I enjoyed skill builds. In Division 2, honestly, I've been mostly a DPS build. And that's just because I think the skills in Division 2 aren't exactly fun to use. They're not, the builds don't really feel that good. None of the customization is really there for the skills that I would enjoy. I mean, they seem to be, trying to move in a direction with the skill mods and everything. But of course, look, they just became a colossal disappointment, especially with Gear 2.0. Gear 2.0, it may be good for the min-maxing. It may be good for, the fun casualization of the game. But from a serious standpoint of building and actual, developing what you want, it was a bad direction. It really cut out a lot of your choice in the game, and that's the thing I don't like. The whole thing should be about choice, giving players more choice. And again, this kind of all relates back to each other. We see players talking about how there should be more choice, how there should be more customization, how, you should be able to do this or be able to do that and be able to do that. But then these same players are saying, oh, well, it shouldn't be in the game. Skill builds, oh, they shouldn't be there. But the whole time they're talking about how there should be, this and this, and how they should have all this build freedom. And it's just like they're talking out of their ass. Like, I'm very honest with this. there should be a lot of things in the game, and nothing should be removed just because somebody doesn't like it. Like, if something's OP, yeah, I mean, it should be looked at. Now, I didn't have a problem with clutch per se. I mean, I didn't really use it. I thought there were some unfairnesses in the system because, look, with a clutch build, at least, especially early on, you could out-heal a healer build. And that's kind of bullshit. I don't care if you have to hit the target and you're getting crits. The fact that a DPS build can out-heal a healer who is specifically focused in healing players, there's an error there. There's something wrong with that. It's the same thing as the whole striker from Division 1. The fact that you can out-heal a healer build is dumb. So, from that aspect, I think that there are certain aspects that they need to be adjusted. But what they did to clutch was dumb. I mean, it's useless. So, I would like to, remind players that it's not just about your personal opinions. Like, the game doesn't just balance because you say so. The game just doesn't balance because you want this and don't want that. The game balances. It's a huge, difficult, thing to balance. Let's just be honest. And I don't envy the devs, responsibility for trying to do that. Ultimately, I think in many ways they've just failed at the development of the game. I think they've, done some terrible decisions, and I don't even think that they fully understood a lot of their own choices. I think it's not. I'm not saying it's a fault of one specific developer, but when you've got all these hands in the cookie jar that are trying to adjust different things and different aspects of the game, and people are complaining about this, but also about this, it throws off the balance of the game, right? It happened in Division 1. There's stats and talents and all this stuff that kind of work together, and there was supposed to be a balance, a harmony there. But when you start screwing with one, aspect of the game and then another aspect of the game, you get this cascading effect of failure. So Division 1, one thing that I like to point to about Division 1 was ammo was considered a pretty valuable resource. Now, of course, there was bullet sponginess, and, they added extra ammo because, the AI took too many hits, blah, blah, blah. But this had a drastic impact on PvP. So now you could just use one weapon. You could build your gear set, or you could build your build to focus solely on one weapon, and that's it. You didn't have to worry about anything else because you always had the ammo for that weapon. When the Division launched, if you went rogue, you really had to worry about ammo. I mean, you not only had to use your secondary weapon, possibly your pistol, but there were times in many fights where I was like, I got to get to cover. I got to have my team cover me so I can get into my menu, so I can switch out my weapon because I am low on both of my ammo. Both weapons are almost out of ammo. I need to switch to an LMG. I need to switch to a shotgun. I need to switch to a sniper. I need to switch because I don't have it. And that was part of the skill gap that so many players, like to chime in that, is missing from Division 2. But they don't realize that that's also part of the skill gap, maintaining your ammo. They just, want to say like, well, we should just have more ammo. We should just have more kits. We should just have, more of this because that's what we say. But they don't realize like they're responsible themselves for removing a lot of the skill gap. They don't realize that they're responsible themselves for destroying the Dark Zone. The Dark Zone was PvE VP. When the game launched, if you played Division 1, Dark Zone 6, that area was insane, right? The AI were very, very difficult. But then, of course, PvPers started complaining that they were getting killed by the E in the PvE VP, right? The AI were too difficult and they were ruining their manhunts, or they couldn't kill people because they were running through landmarks and getting away. It's bullcrap. It's bullshit. Look at the Dark Zone now. It's a joke. The AI in there are completely worthless. You can go to the hardest difficulty landmark and it's just a joke. You can solo that stuff with a pistol build. I mean, there's no challenge there. But this is the kind of impact that stupid opinions have in the game. When people like start nitpicking at certain things without even understanding the cohesiveness of the actual game. And this is the problem that I have. I have a problem with people expressing their opinions without actually critically thinking about the game as a whole. Like I said, ammo was a huge impact in the game. Now you go into this game and it already just starts from the beginning with just massive amounts of ammo. Like there's never a time when you're going to run out of ammo. I mean, hardly ever. Maybe if you're just a complete bullet sponge, you're using the highest RPM weapon and all you do is just spray and pray. Yeah, you probably run out of ammo. But in realistic situations, you're never going to run out of ammo. I mean, not only did they give you a massive cap in ammo, but they basically just increased the amount of ammo that the enemies would drop. I think like a couple times. So now it's just like, oh, if you're down to like 100 rounds of ammunition, you're going to pick up ammo from an AI, and you all of a sudden have 500 rounds. It's kind of a joke. But again, this goes into the balancing of the game. Like I said, there were actual talents in Division 1 that if you got a headshot, you would basically get your ammo back. Or if you got a kill with a skill or something like that, you would get your ammo refreshed. Or if you got a kill with a pistol, you would get rounds in your main weapon. There were talents for that. There were stats to give you extra ammo. When you just end up giving players something, you remove all need for it. So you didn't have to roll ammo, or you didn't have to use a talent that gave you ammo because you didn't need it anymore. You didn't have to use the ammo station because, well, you just had enough ammo now. So not only did that one change pretty much ruin a skill, ruin multiple talents, and basically make a stat kind of useless, I mean, it affected the way that PvP happened. So now you could just use this one OP weapon the entire time without having to worry about ammo. And that kind of goes against the whole point of trying to survive as a rogue. Like trying to survive as a rogue used to be a challenge. It used to be kind of fun. Of course I didn't like the running aspect of it, just constantly trying to run down and just avoid everyone so that you could just escape manhunt. I mean, that mechanic was a little bit stupid, but it's, just as stupid as players running to a terminal and turning it off, or players running around in the dark zone. One or two of their teammates get killed and everyone starts running away to survive, and then people just come out of the checkpoint and oh, we're back to manhunt now, let's go find a fight. Like the hypocrisy again of PvP, where, oh well, I'm in manhunt, so I can run as much as I want. But if you are a sniper build, if you're a skill build and you're running away from a fight to try to get a better position or something, oh that's cheese. Like you're a coward. Please. This is the kind of thing that people just don't want to deal with. They want to bitch and complain about their specific aspect of the game, the thing that they feel is unfair or just whatever, right? They want to complain about this thing because, oh, they got killed on stream, so that this is bad, that's terrible. And I mean, look, one person that I think if you play the Division you probably know about is Marco, right? I thought a lot of the stuff that he did in the game was good. He explained a lot of the stats to people, and that's great. Towards the end, it became ridiculous. Like all he would, pretty much all he would play was with the striker build. And the striker was just pure cheese. Like, I don't care what you say. It was pure cheese. Massive heals, massive damage, really no downside. I mean, especially on PC where aiming is, even easier. I mean, come on. But anyway, I'm not saying that he wasn't a good player. I'm just saying that when you have that playstyle and that's all you play, and then you complain about people, sniping, or you complain about people using skill builds, and you basically just run out of the lobby because you encountered a good skill build or a good sniper, and you run away. Like, come on. Let's be honest here. It's bullshit. Like, if you can't hack it in PvP because of a skill build or because of a sniper build or something like that, and that's the reason you died, because you couldn't fight them, because you let them literally get to within like 5 or 10 feet of you and throw a shrapnel trap at you, or because you decided to play in like a little corner where everyone can bomb you with anything, like, of course that's what's gonna happen. Like, go run around somewhere open and fight. You're not gonna get hit with shrapnel traps out in the open. But anyway, the point is, it's too easy for people who play the Division to just fall into their own little ruts, right? They just, this is the way that I play, this is the way that everyone else should play, and that's all that should happen. When the truth is, the game needs a very balanced and cohesive design. As I pointed out, ammo was a huge factor. But you have to realize that's not the only one, okay? There's so many different little tiny changes. Ammo affected all these different things, affected all these different aspects, and it's just something as simple as ammo capacity. All those changes were carried over into Division 2. But, of course, look at all the changes that happened in Division 2, right? The game was originally set up with the weapon mods having negatives. Well, of course, they got removed because players couldn't handle them. Because players demanded that, well, a weapon mod should always be good. I mean, look, if you understand anything about weapons, having a bunch of crap on your weapon isn't always good. You don't always need a flashlight. Just takes up room, gets caught on things. You don't always need a laser on your weapon. You don't always need a scope on your weapon. You don't always need a freaking drum magazine attached to the bottom of your weapon. There's negatives. There's side effects of having all this crap on you. And that is a great feature that directly impacts, the choices that you make. Now, of course, maybe some of the negatives were a bit extreme. Maybe the positives just didn't really make sense for what they were doing. But I'm not, arguing all of the realism. I'm just saying that in the terms of balancing the game, there was points to this stuff. Now, look, how often does anyone in Division 2 use something that's not the 20-round magazine? I can't really think of any build or anyone that actually uses something besides that. Maybe there's a few who just want to be different, but there's no effective reason for it. And this is the exact same thing that they were trying to avoid from Division 1, because all everyone would use was the largest magazine. And again, when you combine that with the increased ammo capacity, it's just a whole bunch of problems. Division 2 tried to fix that, and it did actually. I didn't really necessarily use the biggest magazine when this game was launched, and I liked that. I liked that, reload speed is actually something to worry about. Oh, there's other stats here that I can use to enhance my build besides this. And they're actually good for the reasons that I'm using them. Division 2, of course, we saw the changes, completely removed them. And of course, that has a cascade effect. They're now all builds follow into this. You're just pretty much using these mods on your weapons, and that's it. And same things happen with the stats, same things happen with the skills. Once you start nerfing everything down the line, it just becomes stupid. But the game is originally based on a concept. And that concept has to be cohesive. If you see, the changes and you look at, oh, well, why doesn't this thing feel good anymore? Why doesn't this stat work as much as it should? Why doesn't this talent, why is it worthless? It's because of all the changes. Change after change after change after change. That doesn't make any sense except making somebody who got mad on the internet feel better. They don't help the situation. They don't help the whole game. There's plenty of things that they could do to fix the game, and there's plenty of things that they can do to make this game a disaster. I mean, obviously, we all kind of see it that, the beginning of this year, the game was dead. I mean, they admitted that was the end of the game, and even as depressing and disgusting as it was, there's not much that's probably going to happen. And the biggest thing that you can think of with maybe being hopeful is that this is also a completely different group that's actually working on the game now. It's no longer the massive group that is working on it. It's, I think, Ubisoft Bucharest or something like that. That's the main workhorse behind it now, with some massive help. But now you've got different developers working on this stuff. So, how much do they know the code? How well do they, understand the balance of the game? Who knows? Like, they're going to come in with a completely, if they are actually adding content and changing things up, they're going to come in with a completely different, vision, or at least a completely different understanding of things, and they're going to change everything up. At least if they, if they actually add content. I mean, odds are they are going to make changes, make manipulations, and these are going to be compounded again, You know, this going to be going from this one cohesive vision to, again, just another piece in this hodgepodge of video game mess. And that's what it all boils down to. When you start a game, you have a vision, you have an idea of what you want to do. The more you change it, the deeper you go into just weirdness, you know, the more likely it is for something to just become useless, the more likely it is for something to become worthless, hardly used, just an embarrassment, you know, whatever you want to say. And that's where we are at in The Division 2. We are in a situation where a lot of the things don't make sense, a lot of the stats, talents are useless, you know, it's pointless. And one thing I would, you know, like to point out is, you know, people like to complain about status effects. I mean, look, status effects, it's not a perfect situation. It's not a great situation. I like to use them, and I think status effects have a place, and they should be strong. They should be able to kill players. But as it stands right now, I think that it's just too gimmicky. I like them, and I still think they should be strong. I still think they should have just as much capacity to kill a player. But I do think the current iteration of them is a bit too cheesy. If you look at the actual original structure of the game, with, you know, health rolls, armor rolls, all that stuff, based on Gear 1.0, it really looks like status effects were designed directly to go against health. You know, armor was there for DPS, and if you wanted to do the status effects, they wouldn't be very strong, but they would go directly against health and be able to kill you that way. So, you know, you would have this kind of balance where, look, if you want to fight and you want to worry about, you know, bullet damage and DPS builds, you're going to invest into armor. But, you know, there's also this stat called health that is going to help you fight skill builds a little bit better. That's going to, you know, it's going to actually benefit even if you are fighting DPS builds. It's not going to be as strong as armor, but it will be more strong against status effect builds. And, you know, I mean, because obviously, look, bleed doesn't necessarily make sense dealing damage to armor, right? I think we can all comprehend that. It doesn't make sense. And if you look at the original structure, you know, there was also the stat, you know, like it was what poison? Again, poison doesn't make sense going against armor. So these stats look like it was designed for the concept of going directly against health. So health would have been the anti-skill stat, armor would have been more of the anti-DPS stat. Why they changed that? Again, I have no idea. But that bakes into the whole process of where we are now. When you go through and change these things without changing the entire design of the game, you get bad results. Like, you have a core idea, and that's the most important part. If you have a core idea and you go about willy-nilly just changing things because you don't like them, because this doesn't feel right in PvP or this doesn't right in PvE, you screw up the entire game. That's what we have now. That's why many players think, you know, Gear 1.0 was better. That's why there's plenty of people who think that, you know, the builds were better. Yeah, people like Gear 2.0 better because it's easier, because they can just get a max roll within like a couple hours. I mean, yeah, great. You can go after whatever you want, and it's so much easier. It doesn't make it better. It doesn't make the builds better. I mean, just from a stat standpoint, from a, you know, statistical build standpoint, Gear 1.0 was much better. And that's because it was closer to the original design. Now, of course, Gear 2.0, not only did it just completely revamp everything, you know, reset everyone's builds, it caused a bunch of problems. I mean, they tried, you know, to cohesively change the entire structure, but of course, you can't just go through and change every single thing about the design of a game. So, what we ended up having was a system that was put on top of a system, but that required so much development that, what do you think the developers were doing? Do you think all the developers were now like, okay, well, while you're completely revamping everything, we're just going to keep making content? Now, look, it happened to Division 1. They basically had to redo a bunch of the, you know, internal stuff because a few players were upset about the design, or, you know, this thing or whatever, or blueprints in the DZ, even though that's, you know, one of the core reasons to go into the DZ. You know, once you start taking out these individual aspects that are actually tied to the game, you end up with a lot of just white noise in the background that interferes with things. And that's where we are now. We have skills that just, they don't always feel great. They don't feel right. I mean, look at the bomb drone. that thing's a pile of crap. Like in PvE and PvP, it's just a bad choice. You know, before Gear 1.0, it was good. You could update it. You could, you know, you could upgrade it into a way that was usable, that was fun. Now, no, you can't do anything to it. You can't adjust the radius. You can't adjust the damage. I mean, it's just bleh. You know, like there's no customization in that skill. It's not a good thing. And this is the problem. My point is, if you are one of these people that just hates on skills for no reason because, you know, they're just not fair in PvP, look, it's fine that you don't like them. It's fine that you don't use them. But if you want to complain about them, how about you actually come up with a reasonable solution? And banning an entire, you know, portion of the player base from PvP is not a usable solution. A lot of these people can run their mouth and just, you know, talk up to their audience and say like that skills are bad and they should just be removed, like it's nothing, like it's a fact. It's not a fact. There's many players that use skill builds. And you can say that, oh, it doesn't actually require skill. That's your opinion. I don't think what you do requires much skill. But that's the point. It's not about opinion. It's about what the design of the game is. The design of the game is guns, skills, stats, builds, all this stuff in a cohesive environment. That's the fact. That's what this game is designed around. So if you want to actually, you know, run your mouth in a way that actually helps the game. Come up with some actual ideas that benefit the game. I did it. I talked all sorts about it, you know, during the first year of this game. About why skills just kind of felt stupid. Why skills just didn't feel good. Of course now, you know, it's like you get basically, you know, two selections. You either get skills that are just complete trash or skills that are just OP. And that's stupid. Like there definitely should be a middle ground here. There should be things that are not just completely active skills, like, oh, just press a button and it goes there. Like there should be different talents, different abilities, different skills, you know, different things that you can activate that aren't just related to technology, you know, like, or at least I guess related to a self-targeting skill, you know, like there should be something for DPS builds. There should be something for tank builds. There should be stuff for, you know, pure skill builds, for support builds. I mean, there should be a whole plethora of skills that tailor to specific playstyles, right? There should be skills that get huge benefits from skill power, from your you know, skill level or whatever the hell. There should be stuff like that. But there should also be, you know, like some sort of reactive armor that, you know, for like 10 seconds mitigates any, you know, explosive damage, or for 5 seconds gives you, you know, fire bullets, or for, you know, whatever the case, you know, like there should be something that tailors to different playstyles, different abilities, different classes, different kind of uses. And I can go on all day about different things that would or wouldn't fit well within the division. I could pretty much probably out-debate anyone who has the mindset of skill builds are cheese and they should just be removed from the game. Like, I could probably out-debate any of these people. I could probably come up with better ideas than any of them. Just because you don't like it, because you think it's unfair for you, because you just want to run around in a circle and only have to worry about one single playstyle, to me that says you're not skilled at the game. That says that you can't handle something that's in the game. I mean, come on. Is that really a credible thing? Anyway, that pretty much covers, you know, my opinion on the topic. Look, the game requires cohesiveness. It requires a strict adherence to what this game is supposed to be. And just because it's PvP, which that's fine. If you want to say it's just PvP, then I guess you're talking about skirmish, because the Dark Zone is PvEVP, and the E portion definitely needs to be put back into that because it's trash. So, you know, this whole idea that everything needs to be catered to, that you know, the Dark Zone should just be for PvP, it's not true. You know, the idea that skill builds should be removed, it's stupid. The idea that skills should be nerfed and not be able to kill anything, or basically, you know, just basically be pointless, and the only purpose that skill builds should serve is, you know, supporting a DPS player, it's just bad for the game. Like, that's not the game we play for. We don't play the game because of that. We play the game because of the customization, because of all the options, because of all the, you know, the build choices, all the diversity, and removing, you know, like almost a third, well, actually even I would probably say more than a third of the diversity in the game because you think it's cheese is pretty much counterintuitive. The whole idea that, well, you know, build diversity should be increased. So, I mean, So how should build diversity be increased, but then 1/3 of the build diversity should be nerfed into the ground or removed? You know, that's just my opinion on it. I think it's a pretty honest, factual opinion. I think I represent what the original intent of the game is. I think I represent the original vision that people bought into. And, you know, if you disagree, that's fine. I mean, if that's the game you want, then you probably want to play Call of Duty or Battlefield. Just saying. But thank you guys for watching. I'll see you in the next one.